I think we can give folks another minute to join and then start.
Hey everyone. Pause the recording for now.
Cool. So welcome everyone to the distribution demo for the week September 2nd, 2021. So I'm actually using this demo slot to hash out how the official release procedure or release automation for operator will look like. So to give a bit of context how releases work at GitLab, our releases are coordinated by a project called Release Tools, which is connected to Slack via GitLab's ChatOps functionality. So each month, the release managers run certain ChatOps commands in the Slack rooms, and it automatically runs several pipelines, which in turn does everything needed for a release. That will be committing new changes to, or cutting stable branches, committing new changes to the stable branches, cutting a tag, publishing the packages by running some manual jobs, etc. So in general, the release process is kind of split into three. The first one being the preparation phase, where we create stable branches from which releases will be cut. So for most of the projects, we use an auto deploy mechanism where we have auto deploy branches that are created every 4 hours from master branch, and the latest auto deploy pipeline with a green pipeline that is running in production will be used for cutting the self-managed release. So in the preparation phase, we will be creating stable branches from the auto deploy pipeline, auto deploy branch with the green pipeline, the last auto deploy branch with the green pipeline. We'll be creating stable branches from it. That usually goes to the preparation phase. During the tagging phase, we update all the metadata related files. So in Omnibus GitLab, this will mean the various version files, which is used to point to different components of GitLab, which we need to pull to build GitLab. Like this version of GitLab will use this specific SHA of GitLab, this specific SHA of GitLab workhorse, this of like pages and etc. For charts, this means updating the CI files, variables.yaml file, where we set all this version related information. So in the tagging phase, these changes gets made, commits will be pushed to stable branches, and the git tag will be created. So, and this git tag pipeline we are doing all the releases from dev.gitlab.org. This comes from an older tradition, like what if we want to fix gitlab.com when gitlab.com is down? Like we want releases to be done from a different instance so that we can fix gitlab.com if it ever go down by creating a new version. So we continue that till date. All the releases are done from dev.gitlab.org. So when a tag is pushed to dev.gitlab.org, it creates a pipeline, part of which is automatic and part of which is a manual job or manual jobs. So the automatic portion basically runs all the tests. If there are some artifacts to be built and pushed, they build and push to the dev registries, or if these are packages, we push to a specific private package cloud repository. So essentially everything gets pushed to a GitLab internal space, whether it be a package registry, whether it be a Docker registry, all of this gets pushed to GitLab internal spaces. And when the package or when GitLab version is ready to be released, release managers run the publish task or the publish ChatOps command, where the remaining manual tasks of these pipelines gets automatically run, taking all these artifacts from GitLab internal spaces and gets published to public repositories and Docker registries and whatnot. So this is how releases usually work for all the other GitLab components. And a release tool is the central point which controls and triggers all of these processes. So now we want to add operator to the mix, and operator brings a new dependency between components in the sense that operator actually requires Helm charts to be available, because one of the jobs in the operator release pipeline is fetching the Helm charts. So for releasing an operator corresponding to a GitLab version or a GitLab charts version, those charts should be available somewhere for us to fetch and use it in the operators pipeline. So I have picked one of the latest operator tag pipelines which we manually created here. As an example, I'll share my screen. Okay, I believe folks can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is one of the tag pipelines for operator 001 beta 6. And this is the job I mentioned, which actually pulls the supported chart versions. We basically run Helm fetch. So this job, as of now, depends the charts to be available at a location from where it can be pulled using Helm fetch. So if we have to bring operator to the official release process, this means the automatic part of a release, the job that gets run when a tag is pushed, we need to figure out what all should happen in that phase, whether we build an operator artifact and push it to a GitLab internal space like we do for other components, and in the publish stage, do we just pick this from this internal space and push it into a public registry? If we don't want to do that right now, do we just have a manual publish task? Like the tagging phase won't do anything, but just have a manual job that will be run when publishing happens? Or do we do something else? So all these questions needs to be answered, but before that, before any of those, we will have to find a way so that the charts which is not yet been published but has been tagged. So the tagging phase is complete. Those jobs have completed, but it is not available in any public repository or public Helm chart registry. How can we make an operator pipeline in dev.gitlab.org use these charts for us to do any validations before actually publishing something to the users? So for every component, we do some sort of validations that what we are releasing actually works before we push it to the public user. So it is essentially why we have a two-phase release process. Once it is tagged, we have an opportunity to actually verify stuff works before we push it out to the user. So if we have to bring operator to that process, there should be a dev counterpart for operator. We should be able to push operator manifest to a GitLab internal space. We should be able to verify it works as expected and run unit tests or integration tests or whatever we want, so that we can confirm when we publish it to a public registry and when user pulls it, they actually get a working piece of artifact. So like from what I see, I don't think we have a dev counterpart for operator. Yes, everything happens in .com project. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% sure. I saw a dev counterpart, and the pipelines are essentially fire and forget kind of scheme. Like there is no control once the pipeline has been started. Once a tag has been pushed, it essentially goes through all of the stages in one go. So we don't have a two-phase release process for operator yet, and we will want to bring that. So this is kind of the context of what we might want to do to bring operator release also to release tools. If we have to do a manual one for the time being, many of the steps can be removed. Like we don't want to bring release tools into the mix at all. We can just start an operator. We can create an operator tag from the last stage of a charts release. So everything gets automatically done. We can do all those workarounds for now if you want to. But if you want to hook this to the official release tooling, we will have to transform operator CI pipeline to use a two-phase release process with a GitLab internal validation system and a manual publish job. So Jason, do you have any comments on this general idea, or was this what you had in mind?
Sure. So let's break this down into a few bits that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
First off, the operator is similar to the CNG, that it's waiting on something else's assets, right? So in the CNG, we actually have it trying to consume the assets from the omnibus run so that we're not doing it over and over and over again. This one in particular is different because we're not stashing it somewhere in another repository yet, right? So the way to deal with the pull charts situation, where do I get the assets that I stash, is what we'll have to figure out in regards to that one, right? The fact is we have to have a tag in Helm with the content the way it is for us to have the ability to generate a tarball or pull it from somewhere that we published publicly, right? Because that still builds off the same process. So we could possibly just actually refactor the pull charts, and instead of it doing Helm fetch, we could actually have it pull that and actually generate the same tarball that we do with the pages job.
That's entire repository, like we just clone the repository and build the charts in the pull charts job. Yeah. Okay.
That's one way. Second, yes, right now this does not have a dev counterpart. There is no non-visible version. We will at some point need to have that for the purposes of security. We're going to have a security branch. We're going to have a dev branch to include it into the release processes. You know, that much is still the same, because in the end, because this relies on assets from other things before it, those things don't exist in GitLab.com. Thus, we can't run this on GitLab.com and still have the ability to prove it works prior to actually saying, look, we released this thing, and finding out when somebody goes, I installed it and it broke all the things, which would be a really bad user experience. So there are things that do need to happen here, right? This is the nature of, beta phase. We're literally going like, look, it might break. When we go to the release process, we have to have these safeguards that we have in place as part of the Helm chart, as part of the CNG, as part of the omnibus. We just have to. So we will need to model this closer to how we're doing the CNG and the Helm chart together, but there are aspects that we do have to address first.
Yeah, so one thing I kind of thought of, but GitLab recently got support for Handcharts Registry. So technically, as part of Handcharts release, when it gets tagged we can push it to a dev registry. So whether that works for us or not, I haven't checked, but I remember seeing a release post where it says we have now support for Helm Registry. So if we push Helm charts to a dev Helm charts registry, it means pull charts can fetch it via Helm fetch. But as you said, we at least have a workaround for it. Like instead of fetching, we can just build the packages when needed. But one other interesting situation that Helm charts and operator brings is the fact that they are not version locked with GitLab. So Helm charts itself is not locked to GitLab versions, which means we can release new versions of Helm charts without depending on a new GitLab version. But the vice versa always triggers a new release. Like when there is a new GitLab version, it will create a charts version. Like whether or not there have been any changes in charts, a new GitLab version means a new GitLab charts version will be created. I think a similar connection will exist between operator and charts too. Like operator will be able to have its own releases, irrespective of charts having a new release or not. But if charts gets a new release, operator will automatically get a new release.
Correct.
Okay. Now
We're
the funny thing, yeah. Now the funny / tricky / interesting thing is finding out what the next release for charts right now is not an ideal way of doing it. Like we parse git tag messages, we parse the GitLab version from it, we compare like GitLab version, like is this a new GitLab major version? Then we bump the major version component of charts version. If this is a new minor version of GitLab, we find the last charts minor version of current major version series, bump it and calculate, okay, for this GitLab version, this should be the charts version. So we are doing such a circus for finding out Helm charts right now. When operator follows suit and does the same with charts version, we will have to do something similar to find out what should be the next operator version. Like, because we don't know if operator has released a new version on its own without depending on charts releases. I did check, and delivery team is actually maintaining a JSON metadata of all the releases. Like for every release, a JSON file is maintained which links Omnibus GitLab tag, charts tag, GitLab tag, all of this. So I don't know if it is available in release tools at all not, but we are not using that anyway. As of now, we are doing the git tag message parsing circus.
Okay.
So yeah.
Let's worry about improving the entirety of the release tools pipeline at another day.
Yeah, sure.
So I see where you're coming from. I see the valid concern. I'm just concerned that we're going farther than we need to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
That's all. So for now, with the operator, really, there's a chain of events that results in an operator release, right? The Rails base tags a new image, which then results in the omnibus or the assets being built, and then the omnibus can build and the CNG can build. The CNG ends up being tagged based on the Rails code base because it's primarily built around that. The charts then are tagged because there's a new version of all of these images, and we need to update the app version and contain version inside of the charts, and that's primarily the function of why the charts get an update. The operator then needs to have a new version tagged for it as well. Right now, I don't believe that a major version of GitLab should result in a major version of the operator. So whether it's a major version of GitLab or a major version of the charts, right now, the operator doesn't have enough care. I'm trying to find the right word. Concern might be a better way to phrase it.
Yeah.
In early revisions of the operator, we may only want to bump the minor revision or even the patch revision when we get an update to the available charts. We may not want to be specifically going, okay, well, 14.3 came out, so we're going to make 1.3 of the operator. Because the operator currently has the ability to actually have 3 patch releases. So we're intentionally making it so people have upgrade and downgrade paths that are same, right? So my concern is we don't want to bind major minor of the operator to major minor of the chart at this time. That might be overstepping where we're ready to be.
Okay, but the problem there is, if you are using release tools to release, the only input it gets is GitLab version. Like
Yes.
we compute everything else from that version. We compute what should be the next chart version from an input GitLab version.
Yeah.
So, like, if we have to use this only for minor and patch releases, the code that needs to be added is mostly the same. We will just have one exit condition that says, if this is a major version, don't do the operator release steps. All the other jobs will essentially be the same.
So the operator is how do I phrase this? The operator is more akin to what Get is than it is any other GitLab product.
Okay.
And as a result, it cannot be directly bound to the Rails tag at this time. The
Okay.
major and minors do not have an impact on the operator. For the moment, it makes sense to me while we continue to develop what the operator actually is and what it's capable of, that any changes in the GitLab version, which result in versions of the chart being updated, should result in a patch release, no matter what kind of change it is.
Okay.
The operator will have to figure out how to handle it, but the operator will then have minor revisions as we are dealing with feature additions. Major revisions will occur when we have massive structural changes.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask this from a different angle. How do you see a new operator version gets released? Like, let's say we use ChatOps. Does this happen as part of a GitLab release? 1. 2, do we just run an operator release command when we wish? Which of this do you see happening for like GA?
Both. So for GA, for effectively 1.0 or even 0.9, whatever we call it, right? Both. I don't know that full automation is actually required for the initial GA release. And I've tried to call that out, so I apologize if that message is not clear. For the time being, if we need to let them do everything and then we whack it and it spits out a version, I'm okay with that because that gives us a month to get full automation and tie in with release tools, and it reduces the overall pressure, not only on our team, but also on all the other teams that need to be involved.
Yeah,
So
I'm aligned with that. I think.
So that will mean we own release of operator, at least for the
I am
time
okay
being.
with that. At least for the first iteration,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. So let me try to add a bit of clarity. We need to figure out exactly what the release process will be. You
Yeah.
do not need to figure out what this particular release process will be in regards to automation.
Okay. Makes sense. Like while we agree that the first iteration can be a manual release, like we push a git tag to operator and it does everything, we can start working on making the CI look like how it should be when everything is automated. We can do that in parallel. Like
Yes.
it's just what changes is who starts the process. When we think the CI is ready, we can just hook everything to release tools so that that trigger comes from a release tools action, not us manually pushing a git tag. I think it makes sense for a first iteration. Okay, so that kind of serves for what should happen for this release. So back to the original question, like, should we start looking at creating a dev counterpart for operator and having some infrastructure in dev around building stuff, pushing it in internal space and all those things while we wait? Like, okay, we are not going to use it for release yet, but let's just make sure we have the infrastructure in place when we want to start using it for release.
So that's a big fat yes, especially from the point of investigation. So
Yeah.
for example, you brought up the Helm repository capability. This is one I want to call out specifically. Do we know how it functions, and do we want to rely upon it until we do? So no knock to anyone, but personally, I don't know yet. If somebody does have that immediate familiarity, please jump in. If we're not comfortable saying that this is capable of replacing our GitLab pages-based distribution mechanism, I don't know that we can rely on it as part of the release process.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's my only concern. I do feel it could be extremely useful, especially in the case of dev, at which point that particular fetch script would just be like, instead of going to get the GitLab repository from charts.gitlab.io, it ends up getting it from dev-charts.gitlab.io. Right? We just literally change the URL that we add when we do Helm repo add.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played with it a bit, and I've like pushed our chart to it and installed from it and stuff like that. I would say in terms of like being able to stash and install the chart from it, it seems to work fine. I would say that like its big issue right now is like the pathing is pretty long to get, you know, onto
Yeah.
a GitLab instance and then into your group and then into your project and then into the Helm repository. It's not certainly not as nice as adding like charts.gitlab.io as a repo, but that doesn't really matter for this case specifically.
Yeah,
right?
for release, for release it's okay. Like we might want to replace our pages with GitLab native charts somewhere down the road, but not today. So
yeah,
right.
But it might be a good option for this though, just because that pathing doesn't really matter.
Cool. So that will essentially mean an update to the charts CI to add a job which pushes the build charts to a dev registry, like before publishing. So that is something we can do in parallel, not tied to this work, but can be used when full automation is in place. So that actually makes sense to me. So,
and that's the nice part, is that actually improves our overall situation anyways.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we have happen right now is that the chart will actually release before the images do.
Yeah.
You're like, I upgraded, nothing works. Like, give it like 20 minutes.
So okay, that makes sense. Now, okay, what kind of validation or tests do we have on operator yet? Like, if we are to use a two-phase release process, do we have anything in place that can use the operator and confirm that it works before we push
Yes.
it to the user?
Yep, we have full CI functionality for OpenShift 4.6, 4.7, and GKE.
Okay,
So
so
we would just need to basically run a QA suite, quick test version of
Okay.
deploy it. Does it come up? Is everything functional? Okay, out we go.
okay, so essentially it requires an infrastructure setup in dev so that we can run this as part of tagging before publishing. Okay,
Effectively.
that also makes sense. So, and when everything is ready and when the CA is in a good position to do the two-phase release thing, we can start looking at adding code to release tools, which will do all the necessary steps of creating a stable branch, updating the charts versions file, pushing a tag, and we will need some sort of waiting mechanism in the operator pipeline to wait for charts to be ready, similar to how charts has to wait for images to be ready. We can do a waiting mechanism to ensure charts is fetchable, and then operators publish can continue. So that seems to be the road we want to travel down the road. So for GA, what I'm going to do is, one, write all of this down, like document how the official release will look like when we are at a full automation stage. Two, start looking at getting a dev infrastructure to act as a counterpart, to run tests, to spin up a cluster and all those things. Three, enhance the CA so that the two-phase release can work, but with us manually pushing a tag, not release tools doing anything yet, but we will be creating a git tag and pushing it. And the pipeline should look exactly like how it would when release tools does the same thing. And as a next iteration, when this much of automation is in place, we can look at bringing release tools into the mix, like figuring out what is the next operator version, automatically updating the charts versions files, creating stable branch, pushing commits, pushing tags, all of those. So this seems to be what I think the different iterations we can take. Yeah, Dimitro.
I have a question, kind of related. You just mentioned it. So the charts version file, it's in my mind, it's a sticky subject because it's basically a matrix of like which combination of versions should be in that file and how do we want to maintain it. So right now we have 3 versions in there. Do we just trail the tip of 3 major releases, or like what do we envision should be in that file at any given moment in time? Because, you know, it will be hard for the end user to find an operator that corresponds to the particular combination of versions that they do have. So I'm a little puzzled there.
So
okay, I think the current situation is we have last patch releases of last 3 minor versions. Whether that means any version in between is supported or not, I'm not sure. Like, what do we expect that 3 lines to convey as a message? But you actually bring up an interesting point. What if I have a specific charts version and I want to know which operator version I should use? How can a user know that?
right. So The metadata in the operator itself will have the ability to declare which versions it has. Second, we may have to replicate the version mapping document for a short period. Like, I don't love it, but we have release notes, we have version mapping capability.
Yeah.
So there's that. Effectively, we want to be following our release processes and our support timelines. Therefore, it is expected that the last 3 minor releases worth of patches are supported. So if a patch release is issued, that should result in a patch release of Rails, which does containers, which does charts, which then turns around and does the same thing for the operator. Does that mean it's going to be annoying? Yeah, it does kind of mean it's going to be slightly annoying. The operator version will probably follow the head. So, 14.3 gets a patch release, and let's say we have 14.3.2. That also results in 14.2.5, which is also 14.1.7, right? The patch release would correspond to the current head, right? So 14.3.2. Then we end up just going and finding the last tag on the stable trees on those versions below and going and grabbing those. Whether we do that by literally walking the tags, or we do that by just, like, the other option with pull charts is we could literally be cloning the repository and then just going to the stable tree and finding the last commit that's a tag. That's not impossible. There's a couple of ways to do it. Does it mean that because we have 3 versions and not 1, that it's more complicated to know the version you have installed? Yeah, that's true. There's no denying that.
One doubt I have, like 14.3.2 got released. Does that mean operator got a new version, new patch version also? Will that version of operator support 14.3.1 or 14.3.0?
No.
But it will support 14.1.5 because
Yes.
that was okay.
So understand, here's the trick. We support the last patch revision that's currently released, right? If we're intentionally, especially if it's a security release, if we're intentionally adding to the number of things that are available within the operator's bundles, because for us to say the operator supports this, we actually have to bundle the chart tarball inside the image. So if we don't say we're only going to have the last 3 patch revisions, according to our maintenance policy, then we're going to end up with the operator having all of the tarballs ever.
Yeah.
So essentially on every tagging of the GitLab, the Rails, we have to trigger the operator rebuild at some point, whatever the chain of events is happening between, and take that tip and leave the rest of the tips alone as they are. So it's kind of like bringing the modification into the tree every single time. So the pipeline is not just reading the repo, it may actually need to modify the repo.
Yes. So whenever a new version of Rails is released, this will mean essentially to tag or to update the charts files version, we will have to find out what are the 3 latest patch releases and update the charts files contents. So it might be changing 1 line at a time because each release only updates 1 version.
Yeah.
But yeah, each of those will have to recalculate. Okay, at this point, what are the 3 latest patch releases? When the next version comes, we ask the same question again. At this point, what are the 3 latest patch releases? So,
or we just maintain that file outside of that repo, the file with the latest 3 tips, and then we fetch that file within the pipeline and we actually apply that. And then we have I'm
Yeah, but
not sure, but I can see how that could be beneficial for various reasons too.
I mean, yeah, but we are not. What we are doing is essentially splitting that task to two different places. One part will be updating this XML file, and the operator will be fetching this file. I mean, this delivery team has a metadata repository which is supposed to do this. Like we maintain JSON files for each releases, which maps to which GitLab version it has, which Omnibus GitLab version it has, which CNG tag it has. So that is supposed to act as that single source of truth. But I'm not sure if release tools currently use that information yet. Like we are maintaining those files, but whether we are using that anywhere in release process, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so
during
let's
a security
pause a
release,
second.
Yeah.
What is the charts versions file? Because right now that's the trick, right? Is the charts version file is basically a register of these are the versions that we know are currently the latest tip, right? How is that consumed in the operator?
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is if we don't need to commit it, then we don't need to commit it, but we need to know what those are.
But
So-
if we have to fetch those versions, we have to make them available to the pipeline, right? So yeah, committing it is the easiest.
Right, that's where the circle comes round, is like we're writing this file so that something can consume it. But at the same time, if we don't write the file, how do we actually know what versions were released in the release?
Yeah, like reproducibility takes a hit. Like if you are fetching it from an external source, we can't know what that source looked like when this was released. Like how did that source look like when 14.10 was released?
Oh, this actually, this can be solved. Like if we want to have that information, we can just publish as part of the pipeline, publish it back into the pipeline artifacts, and you have it along with the release. So I don't think that's the big problem. It's whether we do want to split that process of decision-making, which versions go into its specific place. And okay, this is my minor bias there, and I should be explicit about that. And that is, I prefer not to have a pipeline that modifies the repo. That's the bias.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Normally, the release tools actually does the modification of the repo. So
yeah.
you don't have CI that's altering the repo. You instead actually have release tools pulls a copy and goes, oh, I need to update the chart versions, and these are the ones it should have. I'm going to write the chart version files, commit with CI skip, and then tag the version and make any modifications it needs to make to metadata bits. And then it pushes that commit with the tag to the repository. That then triggers the actual release process CI, which in the release process is not altering anything. That pipeline itself doesn't alter it. Rather,
Okay,
the
that
release
makes
tool
sense.
automation does it.
Yeah, that makes better sense. Thanks for the explanation.
Cool.
so in the case of a security release, there's going to be 3 versions tagged of the Rails code base. Once we automate this, if we just do it basically, are we going to end up with 3 patch releases triggered of the operator?
That would be a concern, yeah, because if they're out of sync, we almost need to actually have the operator just kind of go, are things settled yet? Okay, snapshot.
Yeah, I wonder if the operator, I wonder if it should, during the tagging phase, like the regular release tagging phase, whether it should probably be updating the charge version file, but maybe we don't actually tag the operator until the publish phase.
Well, if we make the CI interruptible, and if they are indeed released at the same time, the latest one will win. And in theory, if we have the proper stuff, well, probably not necessarily.
Right,
But
so that's
doesn't-
where the trick lies, and this is what DJ is bringing up, is if when we do the tagging of the security releases, they're not exactly perfectly synchronous. So if this pipeline occurs for every single one of them, then we're going to have 0.1 for 14.2.7, and then 0.2 for 14.1.10, and then 0.3 for 14.3.2. Hence the issue.
okay, so this is a case of which pipeline wins and updates the master branch, the charts versions files in the master branch, right? Like,
Kind of, but we can't just do, in this case, we can't just say only the newest one wins, because sometimes the delivery team will release only like a single version, but it's not the latest.
yeah,
Like, for example, today we got another 13.12 release that was initially separate from other releases, that it kind of went out on its own.
yeah, but okay, so who gets to update the master branch? We want to say only the latest tags pipeline gets to update the master branch, or gets actually
Well, it's not, it's
release
the
tools,
release tools.
yeah,
So-
release tools can know that whether this is the latest version or not, and do the master branch updation only if it is, right? Like, after tagging an operator version, we need to, like, similar to how we update the version mapping file in charts, that gets updated in the stable branch, right? Or that gets updated in the master branch. We need something similar to happen for charts versions file in operator. So for version mapping, there, like, that mapping file didn't have any other implication than to say this version maps with this version. But when it comes to charts versions file, if a wrong pipeline updates it, it means master branch will have wrong information.
I think even separate from that, we don't even, like, I don't think it's, nobody, if we're end up releasing 3 tags of the operator at once, like, that doesn't seem super useful to people.
Right.
Like,
and
if
that's-
only
that's
the
kind of
last
concern.
one involves all of the, potential updates or all the patches.
So perhaps then we produce the artifacts, but we just don't publish them until the manual step. So we'll let someone to sit on that throttle. Like, that's the only way I can see that without over engineering it.
Yeah,
So
if
the most straightforward method is stop shipping 3 versions in one product.
yeah, like
That's kind of it, right?
you don't want operators to cover such a wide scope range.
Right. And the thing is, we did discuss something like that early on, right? This is a challenge we now face because we said we want to have the ability for people to actually upgrade and downgrade.
Actually, I'm going back to that idea of having the chart versions file as a separate entity sitting in some separate place, wherever that place is. And upon whenever security releases, say 3 releases at the same time, they do 1 commit. Then you have all those 3 versions at the same time, and you build only one
Right.
thing at the same time if you trigger off of that event. But it's just, again, spitballing here.
Yeah, there's actually
So-
there's no 3 versions at one time concept though. Like, so the release team actually kicks off each one. Like the starting point is separate for each one.
No, like they will kick it off, but they will know in advance that they will be producing 3 of them. So until they have, they don't publish that file. And once that has been done, that will be part of that release process. Okay, now we commit that. Like, again, it puts the manual gate on a different side. Like I just mentioned the manual gate at the end, and this will be the manual gate at the front.
Oh, you're saying
So let
someone
me-
actually needs to ahead of time say that there's going to be 3 or what the versions
Right.
are going to be. Okay, go ahead, Jason.
So basically though, whether it's run the pipeline once after everything is done, right? Like do all of the security releases for everything else, and then trigger a pipeline via release tools or whatever for the actual operator, or run 3 separate pipelines that then result in this file being updated. And then after that file is fully up to date, then run the release pipeline for the operator. We're putting an extra synchronous step in place that writes the file. When in reality, run the 3, wait a time, run the 1 is what we're doing, whether we're writing it to a file or not.
Yeah, to a degree. It's just we're skipping that intermediate step of building 3 different operators. If we, well, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
What I'm saying is if we're delaying running the operator until all 3 are done, it doesn't matter if it's a synchronous step or writing a file or somebody just manually running the release after all of the other releases are done.
But
we don't have the way of knowing whether it's going to be 3 or 2, and that's our problem. So
Yeah,
that's
we
where
know.
like manual.
So what I'm saying is the manual step in the release team of going release security release 13.2, the security release 14.1, or whatever the versions are, run all the security releases, wait for them to complete, and then run the operator pipeline. That is still a lockstep on them. Whether we write the versions to a file literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if they wait for all of the pipelines to complete, they're tagged. And now we can actually pull that information from the tag. So writing it to a file and then pulling that file into that pipeline is actually extra steps.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, totally agree. It's like, it's a different way to skin the same cat, basically, yeah. Sorry about the cats. I do like cats.
We understand the phrase, don't worry about it.
so personally, if it is between 2 wasted operator tags versus release managers remembering to do something manually after everything has completed, I will pick the wasted operator tags and not overload release managers to do something. Like they have to keep it in mind, complete everything, then run the operator publish stuff. I don't want us to put that load on release managers. I would rather have 2 unnecessary operator tags, which are essentially carbon copies, like no changes in anything, like the charts version files remains the same. I would rather have that. Or we add logic in the operator pipeline to detect, am I the latest version, and do things accordingly. Like if a security release happens for 13.12 and the corresponding operator pipeline runs, we check whether any new series exists other than 13.12. And if that exists, I should not be doing anything because it would have been already done by the other party. I'm just thinking out loud here.
That might be
Ready,
the
Jay?
easiest thing for a first step, and then also like you have add that check to the operator, but then also you have it only initially that we're only doing operator releases on publish as like a first step, so that we know at that point in time that there are going to be all those tags, because we're at the publish phase at that point.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the next steps would be we'd want to figure out something better in the future, just like we did for Helm charts, right? Like
Charts,
Helm
yeah.
charts were the
So
same way for a while.
yeah, we did the same thing for charts. Like everything had got tagged first, but when those got published, then charts got tagged and published in one go. We might have to replicate that situation at least for the initial phase for operator.
Yeah, I don't think that's our only option, but that might be our easiest.
Easiest option, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our easiest option is what Jason said. We manually figuring out all this and pushing a git tag ourselves.
Well, I think we should, keep in mind that is ultimately
Yeah.
what likely is going to be done for this release.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the trick still comes down to, even if our pipeline has is there something in, am I the latest version, right? You still have the problem of race condition. It might be a latest version at that time, right? This is the nature of the beast, that we currently ship 3 versions of the chart. If we basically toss that out the window and go, if you upgrade the operator, you're going to upgrade.
Yeah, one-to-one mapping. Yeah.
Yeah. The downside to that is, if you downgrade the operator, it doesn't necessarily know how to downgrade. Right?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't have the version of the chart that you're downgrading from, keyword from, it doesn't actually know how to tell that version of the chart to go into the task runner and revert the migrations back to the last known migration of the version you're going back to, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way to do downgrade logic without knowing how far back you need to roll. And truth be told, there's not really a great way to downgrade, period. If you cross a post transaction, there is no downgrade.
Yeah.
One thing to throw into this conversation, and that, like, again, I could be coming from lack of context here, but okay, we're shipping 3 bundled versions of chart with the operator right now, and I'm assuming that was done for the air-gapped systems and things like that, so they don't have to pull externally. But if we built the capability of fetching dynamically for the non-air-gapped environments, whatever version they specify, it could be a way out for situations where, you know, customer has a very specific version already in, and they are trying to upgrade to the next release and things like that.
Okay, so long story short is, I am not entirely against looking into that, but that is a lot of complication, and we don't have time.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying within this release, like I'm looking like far.
Yeah.
Well,
like
far
that
is
would be
probably
a
not going to be
Magic
Helm, but
2.0 version. Yeah. We get into a lot of hiccups real fast, to say the least. And that can be explored, and that somewhat addresses the situation there, but it doesn't actually solve anything.
it doesn't solve our
on the problem. It doesn't actually solve the technical issue.
it solves customer issue, it doesn't solve our issues. Because for the customer to come from a specific version and go to a very specific version, they need to figure out which operator provides that. And that is, from like just the customer perspective, to me, that's what it sounds like, a complication.
So we're going to face that problem no matter what. And the trick is that there's going to be changes in the chart that require logistical changes in the operator, at which point you're going to have a version of the operator that if you give it too little a version of the chart, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, yeah.
Really, even doing that is dangerous in its own right, because as we've seen, people set the GitLab version, even though they shouldn't, within the chart. I'm running chart version 5, but the image is from 12.x. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work at all. So what? So
Yeah.
that's the problem with what we face. So I get it. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
then, yeah, I'll stop there because I'm just increasing the scope. Sorry.
Yeah, to kind of summarize before we wind up, I think at least for the first release, for GA or the first iteration of release, we'll be looking at manually doing this and pushing a Git tag. I will look at making this current CA pipeline a two-phase release where pulling charts and building manifest is automated, but uploading manifest and creating a release is a manual job. So we have some time to verify whether the manifest actually work or not. I will look at setting it up that way. I will write all of this down, as the current issue assigned to me is to define a release process. So all of this needs to be documented. So first code related task will be implementing two-phase releases in the current pipeline without any new jobs or anything, making the release part of the current pipeline a manual one. Next one will be setting up a dev infrastructure for the releases to happen when we are ready for it to happen in the dev, setting up enough infrastructure there so that many of these jobs can be run in the dev counterpart. Third will be having enough automation so that we can manually use release tools to do this release, but not automatically as part of a GitLab release. Like we have a chatops command to do an operator release if we want to. And once we have all those automation in place, I will look at updating the release tools code base to add operator specific bits like computing versions, creating stable branches, pushing tags, all of those into release tools. Does these iterations make sense?
So I think there's a separate issue for this already scheduled for the release for automating the update of chart versions. You think that's still, that probably is still worth doing even separate from release,
Yeah.
is to still have release tools be updating chart versions automatically.
And just push to master.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right. So
okay.
like I'm even okay with like just the end of the chart pipeline triggering a pipeline on the operator just so that it always updates. Right. If somebody
Yeah.
tags, doesn't matter what branch of the charts, it should result in an automated update against master on the operator, whether it's a part of the release tools or not, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like ensures operator is always on the latest 3 versions. Okay, that I think we can do that also without much effort. I'll do that in the first iteration itself. Okay, so other than
that should be
those,
simple.
yeah,
We could even like technically we can have a separate pipeline that's just the one job. That's just when it's a triggered pipeline and it's got the incoming version, just go update the version. So the end of this tag literally just fires off there and goes, oh, I have a new tag for you. And it goes, does it matter right now? AKA, if it's 4 versions back, we don't care.
yeah.
If it's one of the latest 3 that we know about. So
Cool.
we don't even have to put that one in release tools.
We just update all the time.
Yeah, just, I mean, because we're consuming it in that fashion,
Yeah,
the tag here results in an update over there. So by the time it goes to actually tag the operator, it gets updated.
yeah.
That doesn't solve the race condition problem.
Yeah,
Just so
it
everybody
doesn't.
knows, it does not solve the race condition problem.
Okay, so I think we have at least a top level overview of what needs to happen in different stages. And I will start writing all this up in a decision record. So we know what the fully automated pipeline will look like, what might be the first implementation of it, and all those things. At least let's document it in an issue. Okay, I think we are at a good position there. Unless anyone has anything else to discuss, I think we can wind up.
Yeah, I had one other thing, but I don't think we need to discuss it. It's just that I wrote it down, so I should probably at least mention it in the meeting. We can just keep it in our back of our heads for later. But I had an idea just around like later down for when we automate that if we're trying to like figure out what version we're gonna bump the operator for it, that we could just have in the main branch a version file that shows our intent of what the next major minor is, and that the release tools, when we're at the point of release tools doing this, only ever cares, like it checks that file basically, and only ever cares about doing patch releases based on that version.
I think that's worth exploring. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the time being, do we update that file manually or?
Yeah, it would be like a manual
Yeah.
intent from
Okay.
from the team.
Yeah. I think it at least simplifies what release tools need to do to figure out whether to do something or not. Yeah. Okay. I think that's also a good idea. Somewhere along the iterations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, I think let's wind up. Thanks everyone. See you all later.